The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm JC Lucas with Atlanta Ventures and co-producer alongside John Birdsong. In today's episode, John sits down with Kieran McGill, founder of Fado Irish Pub. Kieran moved to Atlanta with plans to stay for just 24 months. Today, he's transitioning into his 24th year as owner of 8 total pubs worldwide with 300 employees. In today's episode, we talk about what makes Fado have the purest pour in the United States, how to build an authentic Irish pub, what trends he sees in the industry, how he's maintained longevity in a transient industry, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story.
Kieran McGill, welcome to the Atlanta Story podcast. Thanks for being here this afternoon.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here.
In 1996, you opened your first bar in the United States, Fado Irish Pub. Why Atlanta? How did that origin story begin?
Well, when we first decided to open a pub in the U.S., it was back in 1995. And at the time, there were lots of Irish pubs in the U.S. By and large, we weren't that impressed with them in the sense of they tended to be somewhat more representative of maybe pubs in the 60s. And we wanted to open a contemporary Irish pub, one much more in keeping of what you would have seen at the time in Dublin or Galway. So we set about picking a location. At the time, I was living in Ireland, in Dublin.
And a pub in the 60s versus a contemporary pub, what's the difference?
Just dated, very old school. There was this perception back then, that, the Irish-American perception of it, if you like, was that, Guinness should be served at room temperature, which it probably was back in the 50s and 60s. But, in the late 90s, they were served chilled from cold rooms, just like they are here. And, I think many of the perceptions were created by, people who had emigrated from the old country in the 50s and 60s and still had perceptions of what things were like back then. So we wanted to be more present day, which is just a more modern, sophisticated
feel.
Yeah.
And so you did a lot of research or?
Yeah, well, the key for me at the time was I wanted somewhere that had a direct flight from Ireland because I was planning on traveling back and forth quite a bit. And ideally somewhere on East Coast time so that the time gap with Ireland wouldn't be as great. So
that wiped out Chicago.
That narrowed it down to Boston, New York, and Atlanta. And believe it or not, we eliminated Boston and New York because they were too Irish. And we chose Atlanta, really for 2 reasons. One, it had a pretty small, relatively small Irish population, and we didn't want this to become an Irish pub for Irish people. We wanted to be an Irish pub for everybody. And then the second reason was the fact that, Atlanta was such a great hub, both in terms of being able to travel direct to Ireland, but also being able to travel anywhere else in the U.S. that we wanted to get to. So it just seemed like a good fit.
And that was 95. So the Olympics were coming a year later. There was some momentum. Did the Olympics have anything to do with it?
I mean, it didn't hurt. We knew there was an opportunity for some profile because of the Olympics, but it wasn't a big factor. And once we decided on Atlanta, Buckhead was really a no-brainer. It was, at that time, Buckhead was considered the entertainment capital of the Southeast.
Well, I remember the original Fado, and it was right on Peachtree Street, basically right across from the ESPN zone.
Correct,
right?
Yeah.
And it was when Super Bowls were in town, when any big event, that's where the stars and celebrities went. Michael Jordan and...
Yeah, we've had our share. You mentioned the Olympics. when, we just opened a few months before the Olympics, and word got around that this new Irish pub had opened, and it quickly became known amongst the Irish Olympic athletes and indeed media and their supporters. And Fado became the unofficial headquarters of the Irish Olympic team and indeed the Irish media. And Irish TV, RTE, actually did a nightly broadcast from Fado. So we not only became relatively well known in Atlanta, we probably became better known in Ireland at the time. So that obviously created a profile that became very useful.
When we talk to entrepreneurs, naming is and nomenclature comes up a fair amount. Tell us about the origin of the name.
Yeah, so we thought about a lot of different names, and typically Irish pubs at the time were like Riley's or Mulligan's or whatever. And again, we wanted to be something that was a little truer. And we felt that building an authentic pub we were really telling the story of, in many ways, the history of Irish pubs right up to present day. And if you remember your nursery rhymes, they would have begun long ago, or once upon a time. Well, in Gaelic, it was Fado, which is long ago. And if you remember the old Fado and Buckhead, the original sign out front actually said Fado.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after we built it, we decided to just shorten it to Fado, but we never got around to changing the sign.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is that a wooden sign, right?
Correct, yeah.
Wow. And so Atlanta was a decision. And Fado Atlanta has been around for 20, what's the math on that?
23, almost 24 years.
Wow. And also went through a complete neighborhood renovation with the streets of Buckhead. And
we went from being in the heart of probably what was the entertainment capital of the Southeast to being in the midst of a dormant construction zone for 3 years. Now back to being in the center of a pretty, upscale retail restaurant outdoor center.
Can you walk us through that kind of those ups and downs of that, knowing that, to your point, you're right in the center of it all. And then 2008 changes. Fado is literally the only thing in kind of that part of Buckhead that is a meeting area.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So we went from obviously being at the heart of the entertainment district, extremely busy area. It got a little bit of a sort of bad rap probably in the sort of early to mid 2000s.
Yeah, because you had like Raccoon Lodge there and Little Ozio.
A bunch of stuff, some good, some not so good.
Makos.
And then Ben Carter, who was the developer at the time, literally bought up all the businesses and properties around and bought them out of their business basically, and had this vision to create an upscale
Rodeo
Drive style outdoor retail restaurant environment. And we were actually the one holdover from the old village to the new village. And Ben came to me and he told me his vision for what they were planning, and that none of the other businesses were coming back into it, but that he wanted us to stay. Because he felt an Irish pub was a very, just like in Ireland, it tends to be the center of social activity, and he felt that was good continuity, and he'd put some feelers out to the community, and that was the feedback he got. So I said,
what was
fine.
your response?
I said, fine, just leave us where we are, build around us, build over us, build under us if you like, but we just want to
stay right where we are.
Right where we are. And of course, that wasn't practical. He said he needed to move us as, part of the project because where we were located then was a kind of key part of the structure. So,
and that's basically right now it's what's sitting there right now to give.
I think it's Ford's.
Ford's.
Yeah, it's right where Gypsy Kitchen is.
Yeah, Gypsy Kitchen. Yeah. There you go.
So, so I said, look, with much reluctance, I agreed to relocate on two conditions. One was that we find a location that we like, and two was that he'd build us before he built the rest of the project. He was okay with the first one. He wasn't crazy with the second one, but for me, it was an absolute, his response was, look, we'll have you open in 12 to 18 months. And, my response was, look, I believe you, but things happen. I may not have put it quite as as neatly as that, but, things happen and I believe you, but I'm not prepared to take that risk. If you have a construction delay on the project as a whole, that's going to leave me in.
If a great recession hits.
Right. Obviously, I didn't predict that, but.
So was this 2006?
This would have been 2006, 2007, probably.
Okay.
So for a period of a couple of months, Ben would literally pick me up at my office every Friday morning, and we'd sort of drive around and look and see what was available, where we could position, what properties might be available. And we eventually settled on the current location.
Which is the standalone, right in the heart of it.
Yeah, it was where the old gun store and fishing store were located.
Yep.
So we settled it. It's a block and a half from where we were. And we'd looked a lot further away, but we settled on this. So I said, look, we'll agree to move here, provided you build us first. The building that was there wasn't really suitable. So we came up with a design for the building, and basically what they did was they took the existing building down to ground level. They left the foundation and basement in place.
This is behind the library.
This is right beside the library.
Right next to it, yeah.
And they basically built us from ground up. We opened 11th of March, 2008, I believe.
Good timing. It could have been worse.
Yeah. And at that time, the rest of the project had started. And, so there was construction all around us for, I don't know, probably 6 months.
Right.
And then the recession hit and construction stopped.
I mean, from 2008 to 2010, 11, Fado was the only place in Buckhead.
Oh yeah, we were on an island for sure.
To go. This was 5-6 years before Pond City Market. This was.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about, we were lucky we had a loyal following, but people talk about the importance of passing foot traffic for a successful pub or restaurant. We had zero passing traffic. The only reason to be at Fado was to actually go looking for Fado.
Right.
But we actually did quite well, and we had a lot of loyal customers who stuck with us.
How many square feet? In Atlanta?
So the footprint is 6,500 square feet. But we've got a 2,000 square foot rooftop patio.
Yes.
We've got about 2,500 square feet of basement, which is storage and kitchen prep and an office. And then we recently built a patio out front as well, which is about another 1,200 feet.
Excellent.
So it's pretty good size, but bigger than the original one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the Irish pubs have been around for years. You obviously saw a market in mid 90s around East Coast. What makes Fado different than the other Irish pub that we may see in Dunwoody or wherever?
Well, back then the differences were pretty significant. Things have evolved a little bit since then, but we were the first to do a truly authentic Irish pub, and by authenticity I mean we literally engaged the Irish Pub Company in Ireland to design and build our pub in Ireland, ship it, in 40-foot containers and install it in the US. So everything from the bar to the floors to the knickknacks and furniture, all was produced in Ireland and shipped over. So if you remember that original pub, it really had a very...
It was...
you really felt... we were trying to transport you to the feeling that you were in a pub in Dublin or Galway. And
even the lighting, you nailed it, because it was kind of brown outdoor.
All came from Ireland. Some of the stuff we actually bought out of, pubs in Ireland and literally sort of redesigned them into it.
Do you have any particular favorite night from that vintage of Fado?
There were lots.
Because here you are building this new, field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And not only that, did people come? It was it.
Oh yeah, we had I talked about it being, it became well known in Ireland because Irish TV did that Olympic broadcast from us. So we had U2 come in after their concert at the Georgia Dome one night. Zach Brown was our house band at the time, which is quite interesting. Yeah, which still looking back on that.
They just opened for the Rolling Stones, right, on Thursday?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was. I might be pretty good at Irish pubs, but obviously my musical talent wasn't that great because one of the things we used to say to Zach was, you really want to stop playing all that original stuff. Like people want to hear covers. That chicken fried thing is good, but other than that, let's just play covers. So I'd be interested to see if Zach has many memories of that. But yeah, we got we had a lot of different people. When we since opened obviously one in Midtown, and the Irish Prime Minister was in town, and he agreed to do our opening, our official opening. And I walked into Fado with the Prime Minister on Saturday morning, around St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
And our first person we meet, complete in his Irish rugby shirt, watching the Ireland versus Wales rugby game, was Neville Isdell, the ex-CEO of Coca-Cola.
Yes.
Just purely coincidental.
Wow.
So it's just that kind of place. You never know who you're going to bump into.
And we're going to take a quick break here and share that this podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business out of Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com. Well, let's talk about some of the expansion, because when you started in 96, got it up and going, did you have visions to expand across the country? What was your ambition?
When we started, no. It was, we wanted to, we wanted to create this, authentic Irish pub. We wanted to show that this actually could work. We, at the time, we didn't know if it would work. Obviously, we had some good ideas, but, I remember at the time being, I think about 3 weeks before we opened, 3 or 4 weeks before we opened, a new brewery pub opened right across the street called John Harvard's. It was out of Boston, and a successful company out of Boston. And, when they opened, they had a line down the street every Thursday, Friday, Saturday for people to get in. And to say that we were nervous about competing with these guys would have, been an understatement. So we opened 3-4 weeks later, and the following weekend, the line moved right across the street, and was outside Fado, and was there for many years afterwards. We had literally in those early days, we had to hire extra people to deal with the crowd. We had a line.
Why was that?
The weekends. It was new and it was different, and yet it was old world and authentic. That first year we became the number one outlet for Guinness in the U.S. and the top 5 Guinness account in the world. So at that point, we figured we were onto something. So the idea of doing some more seemed like a good idea. And I was actually approached by a banker I knew in Ireland who asked us, were we interested in doing more, and they offered to invest if we did. So the rest is history. We opened another one. First one was January 96, and we opened another one in April of 97, and then a couple more after
proceeded after. And so right now there's 8, right?
We've got 8 that we own and operate, and we have another 2 that we license. We don't own, don't operate. They're in non-traditional locations. One, believe it or not, in a hotel in Abu Dhabi in United Arab Emirates. So the other 8 we do own and operate. We were up to 13 at one point. Typically, these things are 20-year leases, and you don't always get the opportunity to renew those leases. And obviously, COVID has had an impact too. There's a couple that we closed for COVID and haven't reopened for one reason or another.
And are these, besides the one in Abu Dhabi, are these in the United States or?
Yes, yeah. We've got, so we have 2 here in Atlanta. We've got 2 in Philadelphia. We've got one in Columbus, Ohio, and one in Dublin, Ohio. Seemed a natural thing to return to Dublin, which is the most recent one we've opened. And again, as even that is a more contemporary version. It's actually called Fado Pub and Kitchen, and it's got a little bit more emphasis on the restaurant side of it. And then we've got one in Chicago and one in Stamford, Connecticut.
Excellent. Let's talk about that, because 96, you wanted to come in with a contemporary take on the Irish pub. Fast forward 24 years later, how has that transitioned? And let's start with just the menu from not only food, but also whether it's whiskey, whether it's beer, because Guinness to me was the only beer, back in the day for that I would get in an Irish pub, but now there's a lot of options.
Yeah, so back in 96, we were so committed to being truly authentic. We really only had 5 draft beers that were Irish beers. They were Guinness, Smithwick's, Harp. We made almost a virtue of not selling Budweiser, because the first thing everybody expected any pub would have Budweiser. We actually didn't. But, things have evolved since then. And, Budweiser is actually, for example, is brewed by Guinness in Ireland and is actually commonly available in Irish pubs, and it's available in Fado. Over time, things evolved. In Ireland, just like here, craft breweries have opened all over the place, and some really good ones. So now when you go into a pub in Ireland, you're going to have 20 plus draft beer options. a mix of domestic and crafts. But through it all, for me, Guinness is still the standard bearer.
Is that what you drink?
I actually don't. I'm not, funnily enough, I'm not a big beer drinker.
Nice.
I'm more of a wine drinker. But I still see Guinness as being sort of unique and distinctive, and it's for us. The more of our customers drink Guinness, the more likely they are to come back, because nobody serves a better quality Guinness than we do. And Guinness is one beer that, at 100% quality, it's very good. At 80% quality, not so much. Where you can get away with a lager, maybe that's at 80% quality, you won't get away with Guinness. So for us, it's still the number one beer in Ireland, and it's still the number one beer at Fado.
What makes a good Guinness pour in terms of the quality and 80%, 100%? How do you guys get just the primo?
Yeah, so our beer equipment is exactly the same as they use the dispense equipment. The original pub, when we opened, we bought our dispense equipment in Ireland. So it's exactly the same. So the gas is a mixture of CO2 and nitrogen. Getting that mix right is important. Maintaining it at the proper temperature is important. Having a continuous run on the line so that you actually sell a lot of it is important. And, then you get into the right glass, having a beer clean glass, which is a sort of a quality standard. So you really have to be, to deliver a consistently good quality pint of Guinness, there are a lot of variables that you have to manage, and you have to keep your lines cleaned on a regular basis. And not everybody does that, but it's something that we're pretty anal about, to be honest. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how did you get in the industry in the beginning? Did you always knew you were going to be an entrepreneur?
No, I didn't. I was a CPA back in Ireland with a public accounting firm. So I was an accountant and management consultant.
Wow, you definitely put the blinkers on and turned.
Yeah, it's not as big a reach as you might imagine. I grew up. My dad had a small pub in Dublin, like very small. Probably not much bigger than this studio.
Nice.
And it was known as one of the smallest pubs in Dublin, actually. So I sort of grew up in it. And I did consulting, some of which was in the hospitality area. And, I spent 15 years in advising other people how to run their business, and felt it was time maybe I should run something for myself. So yeah, that I suppose the idea of doing something was always there. I never really intended it to become my career per se. It was more about investing in and owning a business. It was never really my intention to run the business. It was never really my intention to relocate to the US. Just the business grew and evolved, and it needed someone to pay attention to it. So
yeah, you could have hired a GM and flown in once a quarter. Why did you decide to?
Well, that was my plan, and I did. That was exactly my plan. It was, but we opened one. It was successful. We opened a few more, and within a few years, we had 300 employees.
I was about to say, how many employees?
Yeah, we had like 300 employees, and I had some partners, stroke investors, and the feeling was somebody needed to. This is a real business now. Somebody needs to pay attention to it and run it. Mm-hmm. So, I said I agreed to do it for 2 years. I said I'd come over, put in place the structures we needed, and
Atlanta got its teeth in you.
Talked it over with my family, and we came for 2 years, and that was 22 years ago. And there's no going back now. My kids have been educated here, and one married here, and another one about to get married here. So
look at that.
I think we're stuck.
The every year there's the Irish kind of St. Patrick's parade, right? What is Fado? What's the involvement? Your involvement? I mean, they shut down Peachtree Street, don't they? I mean, there's a pretty vibrant.
Yeah, they do. Unfortunately, they haven't for the last 2 years,
right.
Obviously with COVID. But yeah, it's a great event. We do events that sort of around it. So we tend to do an outdoor festival in Buckhead. So we close the street ourselves. It used to be the parade was actually in Buckhead, and it went right past Fado, and the official viewing stand was actually outside of Fado. Now they've moved it down to downtown Midtown, and it actually goes by Fado and Midtown now. So it's just it's a party time for everybody to celebrate being Irish. I have some involvement in it, in that I help to I do some fundraising to help support it.
So you're driving back down, let's just call it down Georgia 400. You played golf up there somewhere, and you want to stop off at one of your pubs. Are you stopping off in Buckhead, or are you stopping off in Midtown?
Well, I have to mix it up, right? I suppose, Midtown is a more recent addition, so it's probably more natural for me to go to Buckhead. It's also where my office is. But I guess
is your office in the building, or
no? It's down the street.
Okay.
So I got to mix it up, or I'm going to get in trouble. So if I live a little closer to Midtown, so if I come from 400, maybe Buckhead is more natural. But if I'm going from home, Midtown is probably a little closer.
How did y'all get through COVID in terms of clientele, in terms of training? 18 months ago, 20 months ago. What were some of the steps you took to navigate it?
Oh, wow, it's so look, no different for us than the rest of the restaurant industry. It was catastrophic. It was in many ways the perfect storm. Most businesses plan for downturns, or things happening. No business school teaches you to plan for your business being literally closed down overnight for an indefinite period of time. Not only that, but it happened, a few days before St. Patrick's Day, which is, when we make a big part of our profitability for the year. It's at a time, right before St. Patrick's Day is where we've bought in the most inventory we do in the whole year. And so we're at our highest inventory, lowest cash. And we literally just got shut down overnight. So, that was quite the challenge. Luckily my background in finance, helped me. And I realized that, there were two things that we had to do. One, finance related, was conserve cash at all costs. So, we basically had to make whatever decisions we needed to for the business to survive, and then try and take care of our people as much as we could. So, heartbreaking, but we had to lay off our people, or the vast majority of our people. Luckily the government brought in a pretty generous unemployment benefit package, so most people did okay. For those that were hardest hit, we put together some funds and fundraising opportunities, and then we continued to pay the health insurance premiums, which turned out to be a real blessing, because we had one of our managers who had a catastrophic medical event, and frankly, the availability of insurance probably saved his life.
Wow.
So So we shut everything down. We tried to take care of people, communicate with them, communicate with our vendors and our landlords. And, at the time it was expected to be a few weeks, and then weeks became months. And
do you remember the first time re-pouring a beer from the closure? Was it 3 months, 5 months?
I think it was, so we closed down, we actually closed down March 17th, ironically. The final closure was St. Patrick's Day, but we were substantially closed down. That was just the final closure. And then it was, I want to say, beginning of July, when we started to reopen, outdoors and, very limited. And we opened one and then a second one. Before that, we pivoted a little bit into, in a few locations, we pivoted into to-go business. We even created a couple of virtual takeaway brands. But it was a loss maker. It was we were really just trying to keep some people, handful of people that we could employed. It was quite a... But
survived, and it's still still over there right in Buckhead.
Yeah, well, the plan was to A, survive, and B, as they say, never waste a crisis, is try and use the opportunity to come back better than we were. And as devastating, who thought we'd be still dealing with it 20 months later? And as devastating as it was, I think long term we will be better for it. We've, invested in some technology underlying the business.
Software or hardware?
Both. Mostly information generating to be able to manage the business better.
Right.
Not really customer facing. We like the business to run efficiently, but we don't want it interfering with your experience as a customer. Obviously, there are some things we had to do, like QR codes, digital menus, all that sort of reducing the touch. Obviously, hygiene standards had to be recreated, and all of those things. But yeah, long term, I think we're still dealing with it. We're still dealing with shortage of staff in some cases. Some places the available customer base just isn't there because people are not back in their offices, or conventions haven't come back in any way. But it's gradually starting to pick up again.
A couple more questions. So, how often are you going back to Ireland, and are you bringing your clubs with you?
Well, typically I go back 2 or 3 times a year. Obviously, the last year and a half that was curtailed, but try and get back 2 or 3 times a year, see family back there. And the answer to your second question is I don't bring my clubs. But I do keep a set of clubs there.
Nice.
So I'm still.
You said golf. Golf is your favorite sport.
Yeah, for sure. It's
any favorite Irish golfers?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously the obvious ones would be Shane Lowry, Rory McIlroy, Padraig Harrington. Darren Clark's another one.
Shane Lowry first.
They've all been in Fado too. So, Darren, after he won the British Open.
Yeah. What was that, 2012? No.
It was
No, 2000. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. So that year, the PGA was on at Atlanta Athletic Club.
Yeah.
So
Keegan. So 2013 maybe.
Yeah. Darren played at Firestone.
Mm-hmm.
Finished early on the Sunday morning at Firestone. and was sitting at the bar in Buckhead, Fado, with his manager, Chubby Chandler, to watch the back nine.
Get out of here.
They had literally got there that quickly and made their way directly to Fado, sitting at the bar with a Guinness in front of them.
That is too funny.
And within a couple of hours, Lee Westwood came in, Rory McIlroy came in, a couple more of them. So
all back from Firestone.
All back from Firestone, getting ready for the PGA.
And they're coming. Most of them are coming here each year for the Tour Championship.
Yeah, if they make it, yeah,
they make it.
And frequently they're in Atlanta, ahead of the Masters as well. So we see them from time to time.
Well, that's pretty cool. Well, you alluded to it, Kieran, but why Atlanta, and what has Atlanta done for you? We always try to wrap up the conversation with those questions. And 2 months turned into, or 2 years plan turned into 22.
Yeah. It's I suppose, like, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to do business. The fact that we're on East Coast time and yet we're a little further west, it's easy to, with the Delta network, you can get a direct flight pretty much anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world you want to. Very easy to get back to Ireland. The weather here is fantastic. People say to me all the time, if I were to move back to Ireland, what would I miss most? And it's without doubt the weather.
And you're in the Druid Hills area. That's where you decided to...
Yeah, we live over on Clifton. We're members at Druid Hills. And the weather affords a little more golf than it does in Ireland, although I'm always amazed at how my American friends come back from Ireland and say what a great time they had playing golf in the rain. That's not fun for me. It's I like playing in weather like we have today.
Yes. Well, Kieran, thank you so much for being on the Atlanta Story podcast. We appreciate your time and energy and of course all of the great memories that you provided so many of us over the years, and look forward to more of them.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Lucas and John Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.